So finally the time has come to start the car. First we're going to go ahead and crank it, make sure everything is good. Alright, so we are at the point where I'm putting in my front transfer case, differential, whatever you want to call it, into the car. I'm going to show you guys what's necessary to replace the seals. I have all the seals except for one. I'll tell you guys which ones I have, which ones I'll be replacing, how to do it, and which ones I'll have to do separately. But what you have here is, what you're looking at is, this is the passenger side drive shaft, or not a drive shaft. This is the passenger side axle. This guy gets attached to the oil pan, and then this long shaft goes through into here, through the oil pan, into this side here. This gets put into the oil pan, bolted, and then this shaft comes in this way. So what you're looking at is a seal here, O-ring here. You're looking at a clip here, a clip at the end of that guy over there, and then you have one more seal here, and then an O-ring right there. So got two O-rings here, got the two seals as well as the clips. What I don't have, which I believe mine is leaking at the bottom there, I don't have the seal that's back here. It's on order, but it looks like it's fairly simple to take apart. I'll probably do a video on that as well. Looks like you just take this out and then pull this, and there should be a seal in there somewhere. I'll probably do that when the diff is on the car, just so I can keep moving. So the tools you're going to need, bearing or seal driver, seal remover, these picks, then a hammer to hammer the seals in, and then I'm also going to be using some assembly lube to make sure that the seals are seating in there square and not getting torn up. And then also you want to try to clean up all the mating surfaces as much as possible, right? I'll do that as I'm putting this stuff back onto the car, simply because I'll be handling it over and over again and just gonna get dirty again. So let's get to this. Alright, so done with replacing the seals. Here's what they look like. None of them actually look worn, but they obviously do need to get replaced, as I was seeing a little bit of seepage from one of them. But here's the bottom of the diff. This is the one that I believe is causing me the issues. So I'm going to definitely have to replace that guy. I don't have that yet, so I'll go ahead and put this in the car and figure it out from there. I opted to not change these clips on here. They do come off fairly easy, and I do have the new ones, but I put these axles in and out several times, and they don't just slide in and out. I mean, you got to pry these things off. So I don't believe these clips are worn to the point where I need to change them. Quite frankly, if I have to take them off again, I'd much rather not have to sit there and pry for 10 minutes to get these axles to pop out. Not that they'll pop out during driving anyway. So one pointer, as you guys are putting this stuff together under the car, make sure all mating surfaces are clean and still re-lube the seals. As you can see here, mine's pressed in nice and even. However, I did not lube the inside, so I'll go ahead and lube the inside, so as things like this, these surfaces seat into here, they go in there nice and easy. So here we are putting the diff back onto the car. I want to show you guys some pointers in trying to get this thing back on, because it is kind of a pain. There are 4 total bolts that hold this thing on. 1, 2, and there's one over there, one up there. In order to get to the one that's up right there. You're gonna have to remove this motor mount, just this guy here. So there's one, I think 16 mil bolt up top. Unscrew it, drop this. If you do have a chain holding your car or your engine up, make sure that you put a jack under the oil pan, the flat spot, because this chain can slip off. This actual motor mount is part of the reason why the chain's not slipping off, so careful with that. But the one that's a little bit tougher to get to, see if I can get some light back there so you guys can see this, but the one that's tougher to get to is, I don't know if you guys can see it, but it is, hold on, let me try to get a better angle here. So it is that guy right there. You're gonna have these, that guy right there. You're gonna have these transmission lines in the way. The reason they're not in the way right now is because I undid them to move them around. So don't pry on those to try to get a socket in there. You're gonna break them. There's a, if you look at your diff right above where the shaft gets bolted on, if you look right up, there's a little, I guess, a bracket that you can untighten, and the hex head is slit into the oil pan. If you did your oil pan gasket, you would know this, but if you didn't, unscrew that. That'll give you slack on the line. But the one that is going to give you the most benefit is undoing this guy right here. It is undoing this guy right here, so the lines can move around. Stick a socket up there, do whatever you gotta do, and then make sure you just bolt this back so these lines kind of stay in place. So hopefully that helps. I'm going to continue bolting this thing back on and continue with putting the axles back in. So the progress of the car so far is going pretty good. Got the valve cover on, got the oil cap put on. One thing I did with the oil cap, because it was somewhat leaking, I couldn't get there's a ring that's attached to this, like a little flap. You're supposed to get it around these little things, and then it's supposed to keep the cap on. Didn't quite work out very well, so I just took the ring off, and I'm just going to put the cap on as is. My oil cap was leaking, so what I did was I actually took this gasket out, flipped it around, cleaned it all up, put it back in, and these tabs, see how they're sitting at this point here? Before they were a little bit higher, so I just bent them back down ever so slightly, put some oil on that ring, so now it goes on nice and tight. Clean this up a little bit, put it back on, this just snaps in, and we're off and running. So really the only thing left to do is, well, put the rest of the car together. But coils are on. I didn't get a chance to change the spark plugs because, surprise surprise, you need a special socket for a BMW spark plug. So I'll do that at a later time. I did put some dielectrical grease on the coils itself down there, so they won't take very long to come off. But I'm gonna go ahead and put this together, and the car is, well, I got this whole area to put together. I do have to make a longer intercooler pipe to come around this way. Mine was actually damaged, and I'll show you guys what happened. But this guy basically sits like this under this hose. I went ahead and inspected it, and over time, I guess it's because this guy's so short here and it's very, very tight, this coupler always popped off for me. So this oil from this little weep hole would drain down this pipe, and then this coupler would pop off several times. Last time popped off, I never put it back on because I knew I was going to do all this work. When I was inspecting my intercooler piping, here's what I found. so you can actually see there's a hole in there. So I'm going to go ahead and make this 90. It's a little, yeah, it's a 90. Maybe a little bit longer. Maybe lay down a bead of aluminum, or maybe just bend it out a little bit, so it's not as bound when it's in there. And once that's completed, should be good to go. Start this thing up and hopefully it runs. So as I assemble the intercooler piping, you can see here, this is what I was talking about, the intercooler piping being too short. So when I route this coupler down this 90-degree bend that presumably came with the kit, makes the, or clears the churn, goes down, and when you come under the car, which is where I spend a lot of my car, or I'm on my time on, okay, it's not really a good way to show this, but basically the coupler and the intercooler pipe are the ends, like this end is touching the intercooler piping end. So the intercooler piping is probably, I don't know, 1.5 inches short. So right now I can literally just pull this off. Alright, come on down. Alright, so it basically just touches this, maybe pushes it up a little bit, but essentially doesn't have enough to grip onto. So I'm gonna go ahead and remake this, but go ahead and make it probably 1.5 inches, 2 inches longer, just so it has something to bite onto when I tighten it, so this part doesn't pop out again. Keep in mind, when this intercooler pipe pops off, right now it's very easily accessible, but there's usually a skid plate here, not a skid plate, a plastic cover, and a whole bunch of stuff that you got to take apart to get to. Not to mention, you can't really ratchet up here. So when I put this pipe in, typically what I do is I'll put it in from either the top or the bottom already assembled. So I'll have this already tightened, and then I'll put it either through the top or the bottom to make way and be able to clear this. So I'm gonna go ahead and make that now. So I got the intercooler piping made, or cut. I'm gonna show you guys a trick or two if you're having issues, or not even if you're having issues, but when you're putting intercooler piping on, if you're running fairly moderate or low to moderate boost, you're probably not going to have an issue with couplers or piping and couplers popping off. But I do this anyways, just, you know, down the road, if you ever have to run a little bit higher boost, it'll be fine. Whenever you cut tubing, unless you weld a bead of aluminum on there, which in this case I did not do, there's a few other tricks you can do. One, you can leave it as is and just put it on, and you're probably gonna be okay, unless you're running, you know, north of whatever, 15-20 pounds. If you want to take a little bit of time, I recommend scuffing. I don't know if you guys can see this, you can probably see it now. I recommend scuffing the ends in a circular motion this way, not like this, but around. That way when the coupler sits down, it bites. And then lastly, you can actually take and never so slightly just bend the lip outwards. I don't know if you guys can see that. It doesn't take a lot of force, and you can barely tell that it's done, but this basically ensures that it's flared out at the end. The downside to that is it's tough to put in, and you run the risk of potentially you know, cutting your coupler, especially if your clamp gets close to that. So you just got to be careful where you clamp it, but this is a pretty good trick. One other trick that I've done in the past, and I don't know if anybody else does it still, but hairspray. You can just spray some on, let it get tacky, put the coupler on and clamp it down. That also works pretty good. So I'll go ahead and put this on. One other thing that I'm going to assume everybody knows, but I'll just go over it. When you're cutting intercooler piping, this piping always has a lot of like little hangy aluminum shards on there. Make sure you guys run at an angle like this, either your grinder or a file or something. Get the outside edge, run it on the inside edge, and then run it flat. So like that, flat and inside. You should be able to run your finger on there and it should not cut you. See? It should not cut you. That's just to make sure obviously it doesn't get in your engine when you put it on. And then of course clean the inside of your intercooler piping out. That's it for now. I'm going to put this thing on. So finally the time has come to start the car. First we're going to go ahead and crank it, make sure everything is good. Go ahead. Alright, just making sure the belt's lining up. Went ahead and cranked it a few times. Nothing seems to be leaking. That's from when I was taking the hoses apart to get the intercooler piping in, so it's good. Fine. Go ahead, start it.